Hello, we're the Rices. Our goal is that through family-focused intentionality, legacy-minded thinking, and being rooted in Christ, that we would lead our family to serve the Lord, and that we would encourage your family to do the same. So we hope you're encouraged today. All right, guys, we're back another day and another adventure. This time, the High Desert Museum, just south of Bend. This museum is something we've never been to before, and it was really, I think, bigger than we thought it was going to be. Now, here's a tip, especially if you're going with a group or you are a large family, such as ourselves, and that is check out the museum online first before you go. That way you can kind of have a game plan of if it's going to make more sense for your group to buy a membership or pay individually for your admission for that day. In this case, we bought a family membership. It came with 2 extra adult passes, which meant my parents essentially got in free, and then our family can come back anytime in the next year and get access to the museum for free. So that was pretty awesome. Now, as you're seeing here, there is many exhibits, and the thing that was really cool about this museum is that we saw all of this walk through the Western development of pioneers and mining and industry coming into the West. And there was also many other elements that this museum covered. So it wasn't just one niche, and even though it's located in Oregon, just south of Bend here, it really is expounding on the history and the animals and the culture and the climate of the whole high desert region, which includes all of eastern Oregon, northern Nevada, the northern part of Utah and Idaho. And so it was really a lot of history pulled in from all of those areas that feed essentially the Columbia River. So this porcupine was definitely a highlight of the crew. 30,000 quills, and even though it doesn't seem like you can see a lot of them there, it was pretty cool to see how God has made his defense system to be able to live in this world. Now, if you've seen other museums that we've been through, you've probably heard me say this before, but here's one of our tips. Expect more than you think your kids are capable of when it comes to listening and paying attention to the exhibits, but also tailor the content to the framework that they can absorb. Tailor the content to a level that is age appropriate or learning developmental level appropriate for your kids. So sometimes, like in this museum, there was a lot of reading, and so I do a lot of skimming and pulling out the highlights for them and then making sure to explain different things and kind of keep them on track together. Now, inside here, as you're seeing, there was just tons of cool exhibits of high desert wildlife. And in the high desert, wildlife, it seems scarce, but there really is an abundance of God's creation that lives here, which is really, really awesome. And it's cool to be able to see them all in this environment when they're a little harder to spot in the wild. Now, in addition, there is a whole section of this museum dedicated to the native culture that existed here before settlers from the West came, and all of how they adapted through the years. So it's pretty interesting history from the perspective of settlers and history from the perspective of the native cultures that were in the area. This was definitely one of the highlights here, though. There was this whole bird of prey area where they've taken birds that have been injured, that aren't able to survive in the wild, and take care of them here and make them accessible to see up close. And this was really cool because we've seen like bald eagles like this one in the wild before, And they're amazing. You see them sitting in the top of a tree or flying, kind of soaring on the wind, and it's incredible. But so different and incredible in a different way to see him this close. The kids were especially blown away with how big his beak was. Just amazing. What a majestic bird. We could have honestly sat here and watched him, I think, all day. Another thing that was really cool about this exhibit is that we actually ended up timing, coincidentally, visiting and seeing these animals right as this golden eagle and the barn owl had been fed. And so it's just incredible to see, one, them kind of in action doing something, but then also this exhibit for me really pulled out and brought to light the incredible balance that God created in nature. So you might think that rats are a pest, which is true, but then God creates an eagle and a hawk to eat the rats. But without the rats and the field mice, they wouldn't have the food sources they need. Or vultures are like the cleanup crew, and when animals die in nature, they come behind and they clean up. And so it's just really cool to see how even things that might seem unsavory turn out to be in God's balance. Now, the last thing that we saw while we were here was this whole pioneer logging camp kind of village. There was this awesome gal. She was making bread and doing dishes on a real cast iron stove in this log cabin, and she'd answer questions about anything you wanted to know about. So that was a pretty cool experience for the kids, get them out of their shell a little bit and learn a little bit about this pioneer life. And then we got to walk through a barn and see a cider press and wagons and this old corral made out of willow boughs. And all the elements of this settlement were here. There was a root cellar. There is an example here of a really tiny, like a trapper's cabin, and of course an outhouse. The kids got to talk about how even Grandpa had an outhouse when he was a kid. They lived a little behind the times, but it was fun. And of course, blacksmith shop, woodworking shop, and then a sawmill. Now, let me tell you, that saw blade was huge, and this was a steam-powered sawmill, so it was pretty cool to look at how they would have hewn the logs in those early days, and then some of the technology that came behind later. All in all, I felt like we can totally go back to this museum again and pick up a ton, even though we spent probably 3 hours there. So, get out and learn some history with your family. Have a great day.